Hey, how's it going? Dylan here. And today I am doing something a little different on this channel. Obviously, I usually post like little snippets of things that I've done, projects, but I got a bunch of requests on Twitter after showing some of this work I did on the Oz Ant Adventure, which was my little entry into the Epic Mega Jam this year. Gameplay is super light, super basic. But obviously I am focused a lot on visual aspects of things and technology, rendering, etc. So I really wanted to push the engine, Unreal Engine 5, technically UE5 main, which is kind of 5.1-ish, the master branch, essentially. So I wanted to use a lot of the features and things, and I also wanted some really high quality looking water. I didn't want to do any world position offset stuff. I just wanted to be able to kind of import a simulation of water done from Houdini and essentially use that in the game as a looping, basically animated geometry cache. So I'd imported geometry caches before, but not for fluids and not looping. So for some visual effects shots I've done in the past at work, where we needed some people and we had like geometry cache imports and things like that of animations of people. But this time, I wanted to kind of do it from a fluid simulation standpoint and have a looping thing. It's not quite there yet. I haven't figured out exactly how to get a perfect loop, as the make loop node in Houdini doesn't really appear to work well with a fluid sim. But anyway, it does adequate enough for my use, and it's, it was an Epic Mega Jam entry, so it was like 7 days of work for the whole thing. So, as you can see on the screen, this is kind of what the final result of what I have been working on, and why people, the stuff that people on Twitter saw that wanted to get a little overview of how I went about doing it. So yeah, as you can see, we've got some nice kind of water flowing. It seems high quality. There's surface detail, which was one of the key areas I really wanted. Obviously the flow, it's flowing around the actual geometry. And also I wanted it to react to depth of field, because the focus of the little entry is kind of a macro world viewpoint. So I needed that to work, and I wanted some nice refraction going on. So I started out by exporting the creek bed area of the map. So this is the area that I'm going to be showing today on a technique to sim it. So this is a kind of like a little creek that goes by the ant, when you can walk across a little bridge and such in the game world. And I wanted a nice kind of water coming all the way around through the creek bed. So I imported it via FBX into Houdini, and then dropped down a collision source to turn it into some voxel goodness, so that we can collide with a fluid sim. Next, I dropped down so this is the fluid source, so used a box as a source, like to emit the water, with a mountain, an animated mountain noise, so that when we play it, it's kind of it's all varied emission of the water, so it's kind of choppy, as if it's coming off of a higher point. And then obviously there's the create surface node. So that's actually the emission volume that spurts out the water. And as you can see here, we've got in the actual fluid simulation, that's kind of what it looks like. I've obviously already simmed this and cached it out, because that takes quite a while. This one took around a few hours. And we've got the collisions imported there as well. And then once that's simmed, we bring it through the particle fluid node object here, and we cache it out, or I cached it out to disk. So it's a sizable cache, and as you can see, it's a VDB, so it's like, that's all the voxel information there of all the frames. And then after that, we have the make loop node, which I'm not sure if I'm using correctly or not. I'll have to actually check up on that. I haven't had time to look into it, but supposedly this can do for a volume or VDB, and kind of cache it so that it will actually loop. It kind of loops, but it doesn't loop perfectly. There's still a visible hitch when the loop happens. But again, it was enough. It was good enough to work for the purpose that I needed it. So now we head over to where the render fluid kind of object part here, which automatically gets created. Importing in the render from the other context we were just before, putting a normal calculation on there, and then deleting the extra attributes and outputting it to Alembic. So that Alembic on its own is unoptimized, so it's it's quite large. It's like 8 or 9 gig, and then I basically bring that in, unpack it back to geometry, and essentially I run a remesh on it to optimize the mesh, and then transfer the normals from the high-res mesh, essentially, and then output to an optimized Alembic, which is much smaller, and obviously it's quite fast to play Alembics back in Houdini as well, so you can start to see some of the movement that we have in the sim. Now, of course, it's spilling over the sides, as like this sim I set up quite quickly today just to get this kind of video overview out of how I went about everything. Obviously, I would probably lower down the amount of particles being injected and essentially kind of let it not go over the edges, but for this purpose it works. And then we head over into Unreal, and essentially we drag our optimized Alembic in, and the options we want to choose, we switch static mesh to geometry cache, set the frame range that you simmed for the loop, and then skip empty frames, and then set the motion vectors to enabled from the Alembic. And then nothing else. You hit import, and then we wait possibly a while. So once we come into the, once we've imported that, we can switch it over. So this is the old sim here, and let's go down to Fluid 8. And as you can see, then we've got the new one. Let me just get rid of the colors in a sec. It's a bit intense, the green that I had set. So yeah, let's just lower that. Apart from that, I mean, this sim is a very fast one that I did today for this kind of overview slash mini tutorial. But and as you can see, like it could use quite a bit of polishing. For instance, it's just the flow rates. Obviously, it's flowing too much, as I said before, so it's overflowing a bit. And also, there's I've quite aggressively remeshed this one, probably a bit too much. So in flat kind of non-movement areas, you see quite a bit of flickering with the reflection normals, which should be fixed if I just up the poly count a bit on the remesh. But as you can see, the main look of it feels pretty good with the motion blur. Here's one I've been showing off on Twitter. This sim I spent a lot more time on, like polishing it up, getting the flow rates right, the amount of particles and resolution of the simulation, and also the remeshing stage in Houdini. So this one I feel turned out really, really well. The movement feels really smooth, and like how it flows over everything is almost pretty good. There's some stuff that I kind of want to fix, but haven't really had the time. And essentially, yeah, this turned out really damn well. I'm really happy with this one quite a bit. It walks that line of being not too complicated. It is quite a big sim in terms of disk space, but for the results, I mean, personally, I think it's worth it. Obviously, Antler's Venture performance profile is aimed at high-end visuals, so it's aimed at a 30 FPS 1080p target for most of its testing. So keep that in mind. This is expensive. It's not particularly expensive on the GPU, but it is expensive on the CPU side because it's essentially reading an animated cache. So yeah, I hope you kind of enjoyed this quick overview of how I went about doing this water. I think for the amount of effort involved, it's pretty good once you know how to do a fluid sim in Houdini. I didn't really show how to do it like the full process of simulation and best practices because, to be honest, I'm not that much of a Houdini guy. The material the setup for this is super simple as well in Unreal. It's just a thin translucent material set to surface forward shading, and we have output velocity ticked so that we get writing to the depth buffer, so depth of field can affect it, and render before DOF. Make sure that's selected so that it actually gets blurred by the DOF. But yeah, it's very kind of simple setup, to be honest. Super easy to use and tweak. Just need a bit of disk space sometimes. So yeah, again, hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you did. And hit me up on Twitter at Dylserx, Dylserx. And enjoy your day or night or evening or morning, etc. from wherever you are. And see ya.